This year, my plums produced an exceptional yield. I harvested almost 45 pounds from just one tree. The fruit is healthy and fully ripe, so I decided to make plum butter. If you have a lot of plums, this is the best choice. This time, I baked it in the oven, and I must say, it turned out excellent. It is a very simple method, and it doesn't require much work. Here is how I did it. First, the plums must, of course, be washed well. While doing so, remove the stems and discard any damaged fruit. Then, you need a deep baking sheet. Halve the plums, remove the pits, and arrange the halves on the sheet. Once you have filled the pan with plums, add a little cinnamon on top. If the plums are ripe and sweet enough, there is no need to add sugar. There is a way to keep the plum butter from spoiling even without adding sugar. We will talk more about that later. The only exception is if someone really likes it sweeter, in which case they can add sugar. Place the filled pan into an oven preheated to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. A great advantage here is that you don't need to stir constantly. I left it for about 30 minutes. Now that the plums have softened well and released their juices, we will stir them. They are slowly falling apart and starting to look like plum butter. At this stage, you can add a little rum. We will lower the temperature and leave it in the oven. The excess liquid evaporates nicely and the plum butter does not burn, so constant stirring is not necessary. There is no need to add pectin, no thickening agent. After an additional 20 minutes in the oven, I achieved the desired consistency of the plum butter. Look at it. I just love the color, and what you cannot feel is the aroma, which is even better. I pour the hot plum butter into previously prepared, sterilized jars. From one pan filled with plums, I get 2 jars of plum butter. That is one batch, and later there will be a second, then a third. But how does this sugar-free plum butter not spoil? How can it stay healthy in the jar for a year? The key is in the preparation technology. We will not put the lids on the jars yet. Instead, we return the open jars to the oven at a temperature of about 212 degrees Fahrenheit. We are doing pasteurization. The excess liquid at the top of the jar will evaporate. A dry, protective crust forms on the surface, which prevents spoilage. This entire process takes about 30 minutes. Turn off the oven. Then, we tighten the lids on the jars while they are still in the oven. We leave the jars in the oven to cool gradually, just as the oven cools. This will take several hours. Leave the cooled jars in a dark and cool place until you decide to open them. Plum butter without sugar has an extraordinary taste. For me, there is no tastier spread. There is another method, so choose for yourself which one you like better. We made plum butter in another way, in a pot. Here is how that went. Wash fully ripe plums, remove the pits. Place them in a deep pot and cook over low heat, stirring frequently at the beginning. Constant stirring awaits you towards the end of the cooking. The plum butter is finished when it takes on a dark color and becomes extremely thick. When you run a wooden spoon through the middle of the pot, it should leave a clean trail behind it so that you can see the bottom of the pot. Towards the end of cooking, add a little rum. While the plum butter is cooking, prepare your jars. This is a key step that prevents the preserves from spoiling. Sterilize the jars as follows. Thoroughly wash the glass jars and their metal lids with warm water and detergent. Place the damp jars in a cold oven, then turn it on to 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Let the jars heat for 30 minutes. Then, turn off the oven, but leave the jars inside until the plum butter is ready for pouring. Pour the hot plum butter directly into the hot jars, leaving 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch at the top. Return the open jars to the oven at 212 degrees Fahrenheit for another 15 to 20 minutes to form a crust. Take the jars out, tightly screw on the clean lids, and put them back into the turned-off oven. Leave them in the closed oven overnight. In conclusion, this is one of the most beautiful spreads, especially when bread is spread with butter and topped with plum butter. Watch the 2 cherry recipes in the video that will appear on the screen.